Welcome back to my channel. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing how to help your family, specifically your children, to turn over to a more plant-based, potentially even vegan diet. It's a big concern for a lot of parents, and I totally understand why. And it's quite often, the adults, the mum, the dad, the carers that want to make that change, but they might be holding back because they're worried about it not working with their family. They don't want to cook 2 meals every night. Lots of different reasons as to why things do get a bit complicated. So I'm going to give you some practical tips as well as tell you about my personal experience and how it's all kind of worked out in my family. So let's really begin with education, because that is the crux of everything, really. The only reason that you're here and that you're interested in becoming vegan or fully plant-based, or however you want to call yourself and identify, is because you have learnt about the lifestyle. You have some level of education now about the lifestyle, and it has intrigued you, it has drawn you in, and now you are ready to embrace this and bring it into your family. So with your children, it's exactly the same. I feel that they need to know as well the things that you're learning. So what are your reasons for wanting to do this yourself and for wanting to bring it into your children's life? There'll be loads of different reasons, and I think that talking and having that open dialogue, explaining to your kids, helping to educate your children, your family, your teenagers about why things might be changing at home is the best way to go. It just makes sense, really. And obviously with education, we can get them on board in a different way as well. If we just tell our children this is the way it is because mum and dad said so, that's not often the way that really gets the best reaction. So it doesn't matter how old your children are. You can start to explain things and start to bring into their awareness that maybe nutrition, it depends where you're coming from, but maybe it's the nutrition side, maybe it's the animal rights side, maybe it's the environmental impacts, maybe it's all of it combined. These are the reasons why at home we are starting to make some changes as a family, and let your children ask the questions and have that conversation with them. And as well, when we're speaking to our children, our family, our teenagers, the children that we might have in our homes, it's really important to explain to them that just because veganism and plant-based eating isn't currently completely normal, accepted, mainstream, that doesn't really matter in the whole picture, because we've got to remember that it was only a few decades ago doctors were recommending that people smoked cigarettes. Things change fast, and we can see this right now with the plant-based movement, if you want to call it that. We can see that people are kind of opening their minds and their eyes to this. People are changing, society is changing. Look in the shops, look on the TV adverts, look at what's happening around us right now. It's becoming definitely more normalised, and we can explain to our family, and particularly our children, and often children don't want to feel different and don't want to be different to their friends. We can explain to them that this isn't going to be a permanent difference because things are changing, and we are just in it at the beginning, and we are witnessing a big change at the moment, and that they could be excited about that they are kind of getting in on something at the beginning. The next thing I'd recommend is to start using some of these replacement meats, the meat alternatives, because even though you might have heard some fear-mongering stories and some bad press about these products, many of them are absolutely brilliant. They really are brilliant. And the truth is, when we do dive deeper into why these fear stories are out there, it's often actually coming from the meat and dairy industries. These industries are colossal, and they have huge budgets for marketing. So of course they don't want to see people going to plant-based diets. You can call me a conspiracy theorist, but there is proof out there that shows that certain industries, for example, the dairy and the egg industries, they're now funding their own studies to try to re-establish their kind of place in the market. So we can explain that as well to our children and our families. We can explain that, and we can say we don't have to believe everything we read. We really, really don't. So you start using those meat replacements. If you like to have spaghetti bolognese or chicken curry, these kinds of things are very easy to add the plant-based alternative meats into. If your children like burgers and sausages and fish fingers, all of these now have options that are fully plant-based. And like I said, some of them are really quite good. You just need to check the ingredients on the back. Make sure that you know what you're buying and there's not 35 different ingredients in the item, and you're going to be good to go. They are definitely going to be healthier for you than eating loads of meat, dairy, fish and eggs. We know this now. The scientific community have shown us that these foods are not innocent. They are not health foods, and we can move away from them. We can become more plant-based and we can become vegan. So start using those alternative meats. They are brilliant, especially for young children, especially for families when they are transitioning. A good thing that I always like to explain is that sometimes with very young children, they're not even going to notice the difference because a lot of these products are so realistic today. And that's just amazing as well. So, it's your call entirely as to whether you tell them that you're going to change their foods straight from the get-go, or whether you maybe give it a few tries, let them actually eat the products and probably not even notice. And then you can say to them, oh, guess what? By the way, this has changed now. We actually have been eating plant-based sausages for the last few weeks. You guys didn't even notice. Because let's be honest, with small children and lots of sort of picky eaters or lots of children in general, if we tell them, hey, we're going to have something completely new for dinner tonight, the reaction is not often met with joy. Lots of small children they're just not prepared to try something new. Others are, but lots of children, they don't want new. They just want to keep eating the things that they like. And so we can help them with that by buying some of these replacement meats. Honestly, give it a try. Let me know in the comments how it goes, because I found that has been really quite an easy way to help them transition. Another way to really help your family during a transition period, and also in a way that is not going to really affect them, is to take the very gradual approach. So you yourself as an adult, you might just want to go plant-based. You might try to transition in just a few weeks, for example. Maybe for children it would take longer. And let's be honest, there's no massive rush to do this. And it's better to get to the end result rather than kind of try it, scare them off, and then they never want to do it again. Now, something that I did with my own family, which worked really, really, really well, was when I used to make something that was 100% animal products, like maybe a chicken curry, maybe a lamb curry, maybe a spaghetti bolognese or a lasagna, and I would use 100% animal products in those dishes. What I started to do was I started to make a very gradual change. So, for example, if I was making a spaghetti bolognese, it used to be 100% beef, but then I started doing maybe 80% beef and 20% of a plant-based meat or some lentils or vegetables as well. And chop them up, mix them in. The flavours are all very, very similar because it's a one-pot dish, and they don't notice. Your children don't notice. Probably an adult wouldn't even notice. So you can do that, and you can have that meal at that 80% ratio for a number of weeks. And then what you could do is change that ratio slowly. So you could do 60-40 or 50-50. And again, I'm talking slowly, maybe even over a couple of months this happens. And then you start tipping the scales in the other direction, having a higher percentage of plant-based items in your dish. And your family honestly will not notice, or they certainly won't complain. They might have noticed once those ratios are really changing, but they will have changed with that period of time, and their tastes and flavours and acceptance of different foods will have changed gradually. It really does work. I've advised lots of families to do this because I think this is a really, really good technique to slowly start changing somebody's diet without it being a big shock or a big hoo-ha. So definitely give that a go because that is a winner. The last thing I would say, which is a really easy thing to do as well, is to cook your main meal as a kind of vegan style meal. And then if you've got people in your family or people visiting that still have animal products, you could just add them at the end of the meal. So you're not necessarily cooking completely wildly different dishes. You are basically cooking one big pot of something, rice and vegetables, for example. And then for you, you might add in a bit of tofu at the end or maybe nothing at all. And then for your other family members, you might be adding that chicken or fish or whatever it might be until they get to the point where they are starting to see what you're doing and starting to realise that maybe not every dish has to have an animal product on it. Now, this brings me on to my kind of final point, which I think is my most important one. And that is to not completely believe or give up on somebody that says, never, that's not for me, I'm never going to do that. Because I have seen people change time and time and time again. People that you would never think would change and move away from animal products because it's their favourite food in the world. I've seen it, it happens. And definitely with children, children change all the time. And right now you might have fussy eaters, picky eaters, you might have children that really don't even enjoy food that much, it's a bit of a hassle, and you might think, well, this is just never going to happen here. That might happen for other families, but that's just not going to happen here. But let me tell you, honestly, with some patience and time, things can change. And the most important thing that you can really do is be the example. And this is the truth with anything, really. And you will be surprised at the level of influence that you are having subconsciously, basically, without really doing anything much at all. But if you decide, I'm not going to try and do this, or this is not going to happen for me because I don't want to go through all of this hassle because my kids will probably never ever do it anyway, then they probably never will. But if you show them that you are prepared to make these differences and make these changes at home, and you sit down and you have your evening meal together with your children every day, occasionally these conversations are going to come up. You know, mum is eating something different now, or dad. And conversations will naturally arise from that. But it's not even just the conversations, it's just the fact that they are seeing, they're witnessing that a plant-based or a vegan diet is in their home. It's not something other people do, it's in their home, it's part of their family. And that influence is very powerful. Now, however you may want to view this, you know, some people don't believe in trying to change someone else's views. It kind of depends on your mentality about this and how old your children are as to whether you really want them to change their diet or you are happy for you to change and just leave them as they are. Everyone's on a very different page about that. But I truly believe that the more you're educated yourself on the benefits nutritionally, you know, for the health of animals and the planet, once you really do have that kind of fundamental core understanding of why veganism is so great, it's very difficult to not want that for your family as well. It really is difficult to not want that for them because you know the benefits and you know the risks of having dairy and animal products, you know, in somebody's diet. So that's where I'm going to leave this video. If you've enjoyed this content, I would love it if you could leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel, give me a like, because as you can see, it's a brand new channel and it really does help me out and it gives me some idea as to who's watching the video and if they've got any opinions on what I'm making. So I hope you enjoyed the videos. I'll leave a couple of links around here somewhere for a couple of my other recent videos and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.